everyone, my name is Zach REDRUP, you're listening to the It's Not a Phase podcast, and on this episode I'm joined by Galleons vocalist Tom Byrne. We discussed their new album, Violent Delights, the record's loose concept, how the band operate with being in different areas of the world, progress on a follow-up, his other project Valiant Hearts, and loads more. Now, if you enjoyed this or any other episode of the podcast and you want to show your support, there's a few ways that you can do that. Number one, leave a rating and review wherever you're listening to this. It takes just a few seconds and it really does help. Number two, share this on your social media, whether that be Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, wherever. Or number three, if you want to go the extra mile, you can pay a little bit each month to join the Patreon, and in return you'll get access to episodes early along with some other perks, or you can pick up some merch from the store. All the links to that and the podcast socials where you can follow us can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. And now with all that out of the way, let's jump right into this week's episode of It's Not a Phase. What's up everybody? Thank you for joining me on this episode of It's Not a Phase, where I'm joined by Tom Byrne of Galleons. How you doing, man?
Yeah, good. A little bit, I told you before, but a little bit, yeah, I'm doing good. Just a bit tired since we talked about this as well, but album release week, and still trying to get songs out in album release week that weren't planned, but I was like, fuck it, let's do it anyway. So yeah, a little bit tired, but yeah, more excited than tired, but also like terrified as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good kind of thing. Is like, you're not terrified because like you're dreading it. You're terrified because like you're just nervous, excited for people. Well, I mean, like there's probably a lot of people that have said this before me, but you're always like you're always with music. It's always putting out a lot of yourself out into you can call it a market or whatever, but to people. You're basically putting so much of yourself out to the world in terms of like being vulnerable with writing and art and all that stuff. And it's always just scary. You kind of get a read on how people are going to react from like singles and stuff and songs that you released before the album. But, we've only released 5 songs from a 15 song record. So there's like 10 more songs on this thing that people have never heard. And it's scary. Like, keep in mind, 10 songs was the length of our last record. So we've basically put out 5 singles and there's 10 songs left. So almost like another whole album's worth of songs that people haven't heard. And it's just terrifying to release any amount of music for people, even a single, because obviously you have no idea how people are going to react. But we have a pretty good idea now that people are liking it. So that's good. That kind of eases the anxiety a bit. But yeah, it's still always scary, no matter how many songs you put out, no matter how many albums you put out. Even, if you know that people like your music on a baseline level, even then it's still terrifying just putting yourself out into the world, being vulnerable with music. And yeah, it's even though I want to be more excited than scared, it's like a balance of both. Yeah. How have the fans been taking to the song so far then, the ones that they've heard? Everyone's
been super overwhelmingly positive for the most part on pretty much every single that we put out. And the funny thing is that we don't really, when we started releasing the singles, I actually didn't quite know, like, I think the 4th single was an unknown variable for a long time. So we didn't actually have like a solid idea of what songs were going to be going out there. And we kind of played it by ear of releasing the title track first, which initially wasn't going to be the first single. The first single was actually meant to be Dungeon Dweller, which was the track with Craig Owens on it. But it took a little longer to finish the mixing for that track than we thought it would. And there were a few unknown things there that we were kind of like waiting to tie up, a few loose ends. So we had like the deadline for a song submission coming up, and we just had to get something to the label to submit. And we were just like, all right, well, what makes the most sense? Can we announce the album on the same day that we do, or the day after that we release the single? And I guess it makes the most sense to, or it's least confusing if we release the title track like Violent Delights and also announce the album at the same time. So that way we're not like confusing people with the fact that there's like a single that has a different name from the album coming out, that people are kind of having to juggle like 2 different things in their mind at the same time, which is, what a lot of bands do. They'll release a single and they'll announce an album to like follow that, right? But I was like, all right, it kind of just makes sense to release Violent Delights as a single and then announce the album that has the same name at the same time. So yeah, like even when you're so prepared for what you want to do, like, and you make plans, they usually never go to plan, because the entire single release like plan that we had for the album got shaken up just by that one song being shuffled around. So everything still went really well. Yeah, yeah. But no, people have been so welcoming to this album, especially since we're coming back now after what it was 2 years roughly from the release of our last album in 2021 to the first single from this album about 6 months ago. So it was like a 2 month wait. Like there was nothing from us for about 2 years. And then it was another 6 month wait for the album. So until now. And yeah, everyone's been very patient, very welcoming to have us back. And yeah, the reception that it's gotten so far, I mean, I'll put it this way, like I think we've done 5 singles, and not that this is a metric to measure any form of like musical success by, but it is like it feels good when you get them. But we haven't gotten a single Spotify or Apple Music playlist with any of the last, I think, 3 singles. So literally nothing from Apple Music or Spotify or anything. And with our last album, we only had, I think, three or 4 singles from that album, right? And they all got like 3 to 5 playlists each. And like I said, this is not something that musicians should measure their success by. And we don't either, because the point that I'm trying to make is that our numbers have pretty much increased organically, pretty much way more organically than they did for the last record with this record, just from pretty much word of mouth. So that's like the biggest highlight that I've seen from this album personally, that like we've grown in a way that isn't like superficially inflated by those playlists that we got last time. Because on the last album release, like I said, we got so many playlists and they like pushed our numbers up to like, on Spotify at least, it was like close to 130,000 monthly listeners. But as soon as all those playlists vanish, as soon as you come off them, we went all the way back down to like 40K. But that's how like superficially inflated those numbers were. So this time, and to maybe more like directly answer if people have been liking it, I think it's safe to say that we've organically gotten closer to that number that we reached last time without any playlists, and just from like organic fans listening and people enjoying the songs that much that they just keep listening to them at that extent. So yeah, I've been super grateful just to see that. It's kind of blows my mind that we, like, other than like social ads and stuff like that, we haven't really done any other marketing. So it's all been, yeah, pretty insane to just watch that grow as it has, and see how people, yeah, have just accepted like all these singles and been loving them. So
well, it shows how big like the community has kind of grown like over the past few years between these 2 albums then.
I think so, yeah. I think our last album, even though it was a very big departure from our album again before that, was like, I don't know, like it was that, I feel like our last album release was a lot scarier for me because it was a more intense shift in sound from the like our second album, Metropolis. Because when we did our self-titled album in 2021, the sound was like it was still like post-hardcore, but it was like completely different in tone. It was nothing the same in terms of the sound of Metropolis. And I was worried and pretty scared that a lot of people were going to not fuck with the pretty drastic change in tone. And I mean, that's done super well for us since then. And I don't know what I was worried about. So now I'm, like I said, it happens with every album release. Even with this one, I'm still terrified, but I know that as soon as it's out for like after a year, I'm sure that it'll be like everyone will love it. And or I hope that everyone will love it. And I mean, only time will tell, but yeah, I'm even though I'm scared, I'm confident that that's how it'll go, because even when we like stopped listening to the album mixes for like a little while, and then we'd like come back to them to make sure that we weren't like going insane, that we'd written good songs, you know?
Yeah.
Because, you know, obviously as you're making the songs, you hear them like 100,000 times and you kind of lose perspective on whether the songs you've written are actually good or not.
Yeah, you get like tunnel vision on what's going on.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, this song is so familiar to me now that I can't judge it like objectively, and I can't, or I mean, all music is subjective, but like from a like your own personal objectivity, I guess. Which I mean, that's just subjectivity. But like, what I'm trying to say is that you have to be able to look at it from the outside in some way. And for us to do that, we just stopped listening to it for like a long time, like a week or two, maybe longer. And we'll come back to it and we'll listen to the whole thing with fresh ears. And we'll be like, okay, this needs fixing, or this needs, you know, this is good, whatever, or this is finished, or we should scrap this, or blah, blah, blah. But we came back to this album quite a few times like that. And we were like, we're happy with everything that's on here. So yeah, I all I can say for the 10 songs that nobody's heard yet, we agonized over like whether those are the songs that should make the cut. Probably had quite a few fights in the process of whose songs would make the cut and for what reasons. But in the end, yeah, we were like, these 15 songs are we've got this amount of budget for 15 songs, and we would just keep coming back to them, listening again, stop listening for a while, come back to them, listen again, stop listening for a while, listen to it again, and then after we did that like 5 or 6 times over the course of like 2 years, we were like, okay, we're ready to mix this. Like, yeah, let's do it. But yeah, like I don't think there's been an album so far that we've kind of like that's been that, how should I put it, that's been, I guess, scrutinized so much from our point of view. The last 2 albums, like 2021 with Self-Titled, we put a lot of scrutiny into that album as well, and we kind of wanted that to be a very cohesive album, and we had a very fortified like vision for the album from the very start of writing. But this one was kind of more scattered to begin with, and we just had a bunch of demos that didn't really belong to any particular vision. And then we kind of had to build the vision of the album and do rewrites and different things to basically make the songs fit into a certain vision, whereas the last album was the opposite of that, where we had the vision first and then the songs came after. This was like songs first, vision after, but it wasn't just like a retrofit where we were just squeezing these songs into this vision and then hoping it would work. I actually took a lot of time to like sit down and think of like what the album art would be, because the name of the album is basically Violent Delights. The theme that I ended up coming up with was that half of the album was going to be basically violent or like more like a little heavier and a little like tonally different from the other half of the album, and the other half of the album would be delightful or the delights, and that would be more of the, you know, the more light or upbeat tracks or whatever you want, whatever way you want to put it. So that theme kind of unified all of the songs into like one vision, and then it kind of all clicked. But before that, we were kind of like, all right, well, if we don't have like a unifying vision for this album, it's just going to feel like it's just a scattershot of like these random songs that we've just put in, like just a compilation basically, just a bunch of like, which is fine too. I just wanted it to be like more than that. I wanted it to be something that I could build branding around, that I could build interesting visuals around, that wasn't just like going from one thing to the next on the album that all felt like separate from the last. So yeah, I think it was definitely probably the most effort that I've put into an album, like thematically and definitely visually, because like I did like full 3D animations and like a full 3D music video for this album, which I've never done for anything before now. And yeah, I just saw a lot of potential in it that I didn't want to waste, I guess. I didn't want it to just be, you know, because we don't live in the same place. So we can't like make music videos. We can't even make like social videos of us together to show like that we're a band that performs together, or like as you would think of a more, I guess not a normal band, but you know, a band that lives in the same place. They're doing like social videos together. They're doing music videos. They're doing all these regular things that a band does, right? But we don't have that. So for every single release, I have to think of a way to try and make our music visually distinct and visually interesting, because we can't just go out and make a music video. Like, it's not possible. So that was the biggest challenge this time around. And I don't know how I'm going to keep doing it, because as you know, both my bands, we don't live in the same countries. So every time a new album rolls around, I have to try and think of a new way to visually explain that, or visually do something visually that is as interesting if we were able to get together and make a cool music video and still look professional, still look competent, still look like we give a fuck, really. Yeah.
Well, do you have like, when you're writing the songs or when you're creating an album, do you kind of get like visual cues in your head whilst you're making songs? Like, oh, so if I'm writing a song about this, I could potentially kind of create an image like this would work into this song and stuff like that.
Yeah, I usually start with, pretty much for any lyric writing I do, they're always done as I'm recording a demo. Any lyrics that are in the song are pretty much done improvisationally. So I'll always write the lyrics while I'm recording. So I never usually sit down before going into a song and write lyrics, because I find that I think improvisation in music is something that leads to the most interesting outcomes. So if I go into a song with pre-written lyrics that basically lock me into like a certain a certain syllable pattern or a certain amount of words that I have for a line, or a melody that has to flow to a certain set of words, that can be pretty limiting unless, I've thought of the melody beforehand that fits a certain amount of words that I like. But usually that is just not how my brain operates. So I'll go into record a demo. I might have like a theme in mind, or like a piece of inspiration or something that I want to write about. But then I'll just start writing random lyrics until something clicks, like a melody clicks. And then as I work on that demo more, I'll go back through and I'll, like change the lyrics to actually like make sense if they haven't already. And, I'll tidy everything up and I'll polish everything up. But when I go to record a first demo, like a first pass, I'll just be singing like random bullshit until I find a melody that I like. And then, it all just kind of falls into place like a puzzle at that point. So, but it's some things like I get stuck on. Sometimes I'll think of a melody that I like, but I can't figure out why it's not clicking with me. So I'll like scrap an entire chorus or an entire melody, and then I'll write like 7 different versions of that, only to come back to the first version of what I wrote and realize that, I was stressing over nothing. But at least for like instrumentally with the guys, I don't think anything really changed instrumentally from like the first demos that we did for this album. Everything was pretty, maybe except for like 1 or 2 songs that I helped, both me and Max helped do like some small rewrites for. It was pretty much like done instrumentally from like the first demos. Like we don't change much when it comes to writing demos. And I record like everything at home on this microphone. So like everything that you hear on this album was pretty much from like first or second demos. So all the vocals on this album are just probably second pass vocals. Like I'll do a first demo and then I'll go back and like clean up whatever I don't like, or like do re-records of whatever I think is sloppy or could be better. But I do like writing like lyrics with a vision in mind first and foremost. Like I always struggle writing songs and going into an album without having either like a picture in mind for like the album artwork or the song artwork, or like a visual motif for a song, or a name for a song. I find it very hard to just go into a demo and just start improvising without anything like in mind. Sometimes I have to, because I just need to get something down for a demo, but I'll usually try to find some piece of visual inspiration, like whether it's, I don't know, from like a TV show or a movie or another song, or like whatever it might be, a book. Just something that helps me, like that grounds me to the song and gives me a foundation that I can then write, even if it's just bullshit lyrics for a first demo that I can just start writing lyrics for. And that's usually how it goes. We've already been writing the next album after this one.
Oh wow.
We've already done like 13 songs, and me and Max mostly have been writing that so far. Everyone else has been working on stuff as well, but I think we've written like 13 songs within, I want to say like a month.
Wow, that's quick.
So yeah. And it's not like they're low quality or anything. They're just not, obviously they're not finished yet. But I should say we've started 13 songs. Some are finished, some aren't. But, the majority of them are at least like 50 to 80% of the way there.
Right.
And that's like kind of just how we operate. We'll just, as soon as we latch on to like a particular sound or a particular idea, Max will just like start, I don't know, he'll just start writing a whole bunch of songs. And the other guys will too. It's just this time around, it's been more of we've done like a bit more of a drastic shift again in tone and kind of our writing style. And I think Max is kind of like right now has the vision for what he wants to do instrumentally for whatever we do next. And I think everyone's still just kind of getting used to that, which is a good thing, because I don't like getting complacent with the sound that we're doing. I'm not, at least me and Max both agree that we don't like writing the same album over and over again. We enjoy writing something new, like whether it's tonally or like genre-wise from one album to the next. And like this album, Violent Delights, as well as like our last album, and then going all the way back to like our first album from like 2018, they're all very kind of like similar. I mean, they're all post-hardcore. They're all pretty, if you looked at each one next to the other one, they're all pretty like similar in tone and feel. Not in a bad way, but just to say that like we want to do something like it's a bit more of a drastic I shouldn't even use the word drastic, just a change from what we've done for 4 albums already. Because it not only keeps us interested as musicians, like writing music, but I think it's, you kind of want to give listeners, you don't want to alienate your listeners, but at the same time, you want to give them something new and something fresh to kind of sink their teeth into. It's also like proving to yourself that you can write more than just what you have been writing, and to challenge yourself into, pushing into new directions or new sounds that you would have thought were like very scary to try maybe like 2 or 3 albums ago, or like an album ago even. So we definitely like doing that. It's just trying to do it in a way that still feels like genuine and done with integrity, and not just changing what sound we're trying to do for the sake of changing the sound. There are a lot of bands that do that just try to, I don't know what you want to call it. It's not necessarily like shock value, but just like that they want to subvert expectations of their listeners and what they get from a band. But like, we're not looking to do that necessarily. It's more of like a personal thing for us, where we don't want to get bored with what we're writing. So not that like we're bored with necessarily like writing post-hardcore, not even that, just we want to find ways to keep that genre that we love interesting to us and to like people that listen to our stuff.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned there, but that you guys are basically constantly writing new stuff. And I noticed that you even tweeted the name of this album, Valiant Hearts, back in June 2022. When did you even start putting this album together?
We started putting this one together before our self-titled album was even released. So maybe like early 2021, late 2020, maybe. It was probably just on the, like, it was probably closer to the release of our last album. So maybe like, when did that come out? May. So maybe like April 2021, we started like actually thinking about what we want to do next. But I think with this one, we've already been writing what we want to do next for the last like month and a half or 2 months. We already have a name for it. I've already been doing artwork. We already have 13 demos. We already have a direction, like a really solid direction that we're really happy about, stuff that is exciting to us. We only really go through with an idea or a concept if it's genuinely exciting to us as, the ones writing it. Because I think that if you can find ways to keep yourself excited about your own music, then I think that translates to your audience. Like, hopefully it translates like twofold or even more than the excitement it brings you to think of that idea or to think of that vision for an album or a song. And obviously it's all in the execution of that as well. So you have to do it well, and you have to make it sound good, and you have to make it look interesting. But yeah, hopefully, I think our listeners at this point, after, some of them have been with us since 2018, since, that's what, like 6 years now, which is fucking insane. So the people that have been with us since then, I think they're, hopefully new listeners as well. I think I really hope that they're interested in seeing us try new things, because I don't think we've ever been a band, even though we've written like 4 post-hardcore albums to now, we've always tried to still do new things on each record and polish our writing, make sure the writing is better with each release, make sure that it's, not just more competent, but that we're trying new sounds, that we're trying, new things vocally, hopefully. And I think that goes even further with what we're currently writing for what comes after this. So yeah, I mean, hopefully we're not just getting locked into thinking that our fans are going to like whatever we do. I mean, we hope so, but you never know for sure. Like there's been plenty of bands that have tried something new, or tried to blend their old sound with a new sound that hasn't always gone over well, because maybe it feels superficial, or it doesn't feel genuine, or it feels or they're just trying to do it for the sake of, I don't know, radio or whatever. Like, there's a whole bunch of different reasons that people do things in terms of like changing their sound as a band. And this, we don't see it as that. We're not changing our sound as a band. We're not even really moving away from metal or post-hardcore, really. We're just finding ways to make that more interesting and more fresh, and try to find like a pocket in this genre and in this scene that I don't think a lot of people are taking advantage of, I guess. So yeah, it's more of that, and trying to like carve out an area in such a saturated market and a music scene that's, always getting, I forget like what Spotify said, but they said like 50 million minutes of music gets uploaded. I don't know whether it's a day or like a week, like something like that.
A lot of music.
Some fucking insane amount. and even if you consolidate that down to just like the scene, like heavy music scene or like the alternative scene and all the music that comes out there, that's still millions of minutes of music that's coming out a week or a day or whatever it is. And you have to find a way to stand out and do something new. Not even new. You can't even, because originality as a concept is like fundamentally like not a thing because there's no original thought. So, but that doesn't mean you can try to make something feel original in a way. It doesn't mean that you can't try new things and try to, you know, I think a lot of quote unquote originality comes from people taking existing concepts that exist, you know, in isolation of each other and bringing them together and making something new out of that thing. So when I hear originality, that's what I think of. And I think I'm kind of getting lost in the sauce of like explaining this. But yeah, we don't like, it's not really like a pretentious thing with us. We're not trying to be original. We're not trying to make music that necessarily stands out. Like we're just making music that we're excited about.
Yeah.
And I think making the music that you're excited about is more important than trying to be original. Because I think, like I said, if you're excited about the music and you think it's good music and you think it's worth hearing, then hopefully the people that already listen to your band or, you know, people that will listen to your band, hopefully they have that same opinion of what you're writing. So yeah, I think it's a very hard balancing act to achieve, but it's one that we're always trying to kind of do. Yeah.
So you touched on it earlier, but just to build the context for people who may not know you too well, like maybe just like maybe more like Fair Weather fans or whatever it may be. So you're based in Australia and the other guys are all based in Russia. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how does that go like when you're writing songs or putting it together an album or even like just kind of band decisions? Is it all like kind of Zoom meetings kind of like this or?
No, not even Zoom meetings. We don't ever talk to each other face to face. We literally just text each other. That's
really?
It. Yeah, that's it. We're such like a well-oiled machine at this point that we don't even have to jump on Zoom meetings and do face-to-faces because we're just like me and Max, or Max and I, the more grammatically correct way of saying that, I guess. Max and I, we usually are the ones that come up with the vision for each album. Max will usually lay down like the instrumental tone and everything for what like his idea for an album would be, and that's the same as what's happened with what we're currently writing. So that pretty much has been the way that we write things since 2021. Before that, it was kind of a lot more nebulous, and we still not talking to each other face to face, just texting. We've been like just texting each other for like the last 6 years. Not even like voice calls, because I mean, for one, their English isn't as good as mine. I mean, they've gotten like so much better in the last 6 years. Like Max is like fluent in English now. When we first met and when we were first talking, he was good with English. Like he could get by on like talking like with specifics about like what we want to do with music and stuff, but it wasn't fluent.
Yeah.
And 6 years later, he's like incredibly good at English. Like insane. And the other guys, Eugene and Sergey, they've really improved in their English as well. When I first met Eugene, or Evgeny, which is his Russian name, he was at like zero English, and I had to communicate with him through Max. Sergey, he knew a bit of English. He was kind of like probably in between in terms of like fluency. He was in between Eugene at like 0 and Max at like say 50%. So it was kind of like a spectrum of fluency a little bit. So it kind of had to like trickle from the very start of the band. It always kind of had to trickle down from Max, and then Max would explain what I'm saying to them, and then it would kind of just go the opposite way, where they would say something to Max and then Max would have to translate it to me. So in the early days, that was pretty difficult because it was harder to explain things. But now everyone, and I've even like, I don't know much Russian, but I've picked up a little bit of Russian as well in the meantime. Mostly swear words, like mostly not good words. But you know, now since 2021, I would say Max has been pretty fluent with English since like 2021. And because of that, we're usually the ones that are kind of we're laying down the foundation for what each album is going to be. Like I'm laying it down kind of like thematically, lyrically, but also visually. And Max is kind of coming up with what the album is going to be sonically, like in terms of like the instrumental sounds and what the album on a instrumental level is going to sound like. And I think like 2018, when we did our first album, it wasn't like that. That was way more messy. That was just kind of like everyone writing whatever the fuck they wanted to write. And then we just put it into an album.
Okay.
And then Metropolis in 2020 that was kind of the same, but it was slowly kind of getting a bit more cohesive a little bit, where, you know, people, like, we were all kind of understanding each other a little better, and we started to write songs that were like, it wasn't just like, how do I put it? Like, everyone collectively was writing songs to fit the same sort of theme, rather than just writing a bunch of different songs and then just putting them under the same album name. And then with 2021, Max and I, we said, we're not going to write anything for this new album, you know, until we both agree on what vision we want to do for it. Because you're going to have like a visual and a thematic vision for the album, and I'm going to have, you know, my own vision for writing the instrumentals. And with our 2021 album, we just wanted to write an homage or an album inspired by Emma Rose's self-titled album, because that's like, for me and Max, that's like one of our top 3 albums of all time. So that was like a huge influence on that album. We're like, I want to write something that's as cohesive as that, because that album is it's like 10 songs long. Like, we took a lot of cues, like even from the track list. Like, we're like, okay, 10 songs. This Galleons album is going to be 10 songs. The Emma Rose album is 10 songs. We want to find a way to write like a 10-song album that's super cohesive. Every song flows onto another like perfectly. They all sound unified under one sound. Lyrically, visually, everything is just, you know, on the same wavelength. Everything feels unified. That was the main goal for that album. And now carrying that over to the current album that's coming out this week, like I said, that album in 2021 started with vision first, and then we wrote songs. But we still carried that sort of philosophy of the fact that we want to have all these songs be unified, like under one vision for an album, even though it was the songs that came first technically, and the vision for the album came later. I mean, to more directly answer the question, Max and I are usually the ones that lay the foundation, I guess you could say, for whatever a release is going to be. And then Max will work with Eugene and Sergey to kind of make sure that the songs are all following that sonic sound, or that sonic theme that's been kind of laid out already by the songs that he's written.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, it's not really that hard to communicate all this stuff now. Like I said, we're pretty much a well-oiled machine at this point, where it just kind of, it's like self-sustaining in a way, where Max will just come up with a bunch of songs. He'll like write 3 to 5 songs at a time that all fit under one certain thing, and he'll go like, do you like the sound of these? And I'll like go and do demos, and then if all the demos turn out well, we'll be like, fuck yeah, let's make an album out of these, like this sound, because it's exciting, like I said. But if he writes a few demos and they're not sort of like too cohesive with each other, and they're not really clicking vocally for me, then we might either like put them on ice for a later date and save them for something else, or we might just scrap them all together and just say, let's try something else. I think we found that that's the easiest way to kind of keep making music so, I wouldn't say quickly, but I'd say consistently, that we just have, 2 people mainly that come up with what needs to be like building a house, essentially, like laying the foundation, and then the other members help build everything else around it, like the walls, the roof. So I think it really helps to have like 2 main people that have a vision for what a release is going to be, so that everyone isn't just like scrambling to kind of write random shit that you then just chuck on an album at the end, because it's just what you've written, and you don't really have, a way to explain what you've written. It's just what you've written. I always like having a reason for writing rather than just writing for the sake of making songs. And I think the guys are a lot similar in that way. But yeah, it's not been hard at all, really, communicating with, at least like I said, since 2021. Like we don't have really any trouble. We don't really have like any arguments, really. I think we maybe had like one argument at the end of during like the mixing process of this album, and then we had one argument about what songs were going to make the cut.
Okay.
And those are pretty much the 2 most contentious times in making an album for us, where, because it's everyone's work and everyone's written something, and no one wants to hear that they're like a song that they've written isn't going to make the album. But you only have a finite amount of money and budget to make this stuff.
Yeah.
And while we would love to put every song that was written for the album on the album, like we just can't do it. Like it costs us, like, if we wanted to make this like 20 songs instead, that would have been another, say, like, I don't know, $3,000 USD or something. So
not cheap.
It's just, not cheap and not realistic. So everyone has to make sacrifices at some point in the band, and even though we might argue about what makes the cut and what doesn't, I think in the end it was like we settled on like a kind of a balance of like, I think Max wrote like half the songs, and then Eugene wrote like half the songs, and then Sergey, closer to the end of when we were demoing, he wrote like one song, which was Crybaby, that ended up being the closer.
Okay.
And that's Sergey has now written the closer for both the last two albums. So he like comes in at the 11th hour with like a really fucking good song that I'm just like, okay, this has to make it on the album, and it has to be like, and like it's just too good not to be on the album. And like I'm with that, like a lot of the other songs as well. Like I'm like that with pretty much all of the songs, but like Sergey 2 times in a row now has come in right at the end of demoing, right at the end of like when we're about to go into mixing, and he just like drops a fucking banger of a song like as a demo, and we're just like, all right, well, what song has to be removed now, because this one is obviously too good. Not like, it's the vocal demo turned out like everyone was super happy with it. The instrumental turned out very good. Like it's just a very, very solid song that would be everyone can agree like should make the cut. But what has to be removed? Yeah. That's where like arguments start. So, but it's all still, it's like arguing at this point like with your brother or with your like a family member. Like you're not gonna hold it against them after the argument's done. Really, like you're gonna find a way to get over it, because at the end of the day, that it's for the betterment of the album, and that it's going to make the release better as a whole if that song that we all agree is very good goes on the album.
Yeah.
So
well, how do you, obviously Sergey being the other vocalist, how do you two kind of divvy up lyrics and who sings at this part, who screams at this part? How does that kind of happen?
I usually am the one writing all of the vocals from like day dot. So like from the start of a demo, I'll write the screaming parts. Or now this is just how we do it, because it's harder for like I can record everything from home without like getting in trouble or like getting neighbors yelling at me or whatever. So it's very easy for me, but it's a bit harder for Sergey to record demos than it is for me to record demos, because he has to actually pay to go to a studio. He lives in Poland now, and he actually has to like put aside time to go to a studio and record demos for a song and write vocals for a song. So we just found, or at least it's just the way it's gone recently, that it's been easier for me to just write the full vocal arrangement of each song, and then we'll, divide, at least for this album is the first album that we've divided screaming parts for, where I've actually done screaming parts for it, because I wanted to have a more dynamic sound between the screamings. Like Sergey's screams are quite a bit lower than mine, and then mine are a bit higher than his. So I wanted it to be a more dynamic range for the screams than previous albums, just so there's highs and lows. And like Sergey's voice is just naturally lower. He can go high, but it's not as high as I wanted it to get. So that, because of that, I've layered, or during the mixing process, we layered both his vocals and my vocals together in certain parts. In some, mine will be pushed more to the front and his will be in the background, and then mine will be in the background and his will be pushed more to the front. So it's, like I said, just to get that more dynamic feeling of, high and low screams, but also like the fact that there's 2 different voices in there that add a bit more richness to the sound overall. That I think, when you have 2 people screaming at once, I think you do definitely get, just because that you got 2 different voices, you're kind of getting 2 different sounding people that can make something sound more interesting than just one voice sometimes. And I think, people obviously reference our band being, and us too, like Dance Gavin Dance has been an inspiration of ours in the past, especially their earlier stuff with Johnny. That is like the stuff that, if any like DGD stuff is kind of cascaded over to our sound, it's definitely like Downtown Battle Mountain or Downtown Battle Mountain 2. And I think people do like rightfully point that out in our music, where they're like, oh, this is like, sounds a little bit like Dance Gavin Dance, where like, we're like, that's part, like that's one of the many, many bands that have inspired us along this journey that we've been on. And I mean, Andrew, was even on this album, so it's not like a well-kept secret or anything. Yeah. But I think we definitely also try to have that same like dynamic as they do, and like many other bands like that do, in like math rock and stuff, where they'll have multiple vocalists on a song that all try to add richness and dynamic to a song that is you could have just one vocalist on it doing everything, but it kind of adds more to it by having multiple people doing some of those same things.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. And what about like on a local standpoint? Because are there any like notable influences? Because I know obviously in some of your older material, like in Valiant Hearts, there's like a Bloodborne reference. Were there any like references on this record?
Oh, there's heaps, and like everything that I do and everything we do, there's always multiple things that it comes from. Like at least for Violent Delights, off the top of my head, there's like Phantom of the Opera, there's Devilman Crybaby, there's Deadman Wonderland, there's Howl's Moving Castle, there is there's probably way more that I've even forgotten about myself. Like I usually just in like random shit, I might just like chuck in like one line that's a reference to something that is just something that I forget about like 6 months later, and then I'll come back to it and I'm like, oh, that's from this. And I won't even be something that registers in my mind. I'll just be like, I might listen back to one of our songs and not even realize that I wrote like a reference to another like piece of pop culture or media, but I do it all the time. It's just something that gives me, I don't know if you want to call it like a muse or inspiration or whatever. It's just I like being able to borrow from things that with like homages or references or whatever that isn't just, it usually has to like fit into the theme of what the song is already about for me to do it. But yeah, I like doing that a lot. I mean, not just to be something to point at and go like, hey, that's from this, but to be like, oh, that makes sense in the context of the song itself as well, and not in like isolation to the song. But yeah, I can't even count or remember like the amount of reference, like even the album that we're working on now, the next one is just already like chock full of references to shit. Evangelion, Armored Core, what else? A lot of Evangelion for sure.
Right.
Like it's like just so much, because it's really easy to write about something that is, even if you're not making a reference to any like line of dialogue or something that's been written in those things, and you're just using it as like a base to write like completely original lyrics around. It just helps so much to have something that you're already passionate about or has already meant a lot to you as a piece of media, like as a starting point. So all the time. This one, like this album and the next album especially, I'd say.
Would you ever want to do like a I guess you're kind of doing a concept album here, aren't you? Like you said, it's kind of split into two. Kind of like a loose concept, I guess.
Yeah, it's like a loose concept album, I would say. Definitely not a concept album, but a loose concept album, if that's the thing. Like we're not like pulling like the Deer Hunter or a
Coheed kind of thing.
A Coheed, not like that at all. We're not going to be putting out a graphic novel or a string of. Yeah.
If you wanted to, you could. Like obviously, you do all the artwork as well.
Like there's obviously something that I could make. Like I could keep making stuff that's already like centered around the visuals that I've come up with, like for sure. But I always find more excitement and more interest into moving on to something new after I've already been doing like these visuals and all this stuff for like the last, like you guys have only seen it for the last 6 months, but I've been working on it for like the last 2 years. So it becomes kind of played out at a point for me where I'm like, okay, I'm 2 years into this. The album is out now. I want to move on to something new. And, even with the new stuff that I'm working on, I've already been working on it for 2 months. By the time like you guys hear it and fans hear it, it's probably going to be like extremely old to me because I've been working on it for like 2 years again. Yeah. So while I definitely could keep, making new visuals and making new, I don't know, anything like in terms of that concept that I've kind of made a foundation for on an album, I don't know. It just doesn't interest me as making something that's kind of new.
Yeah,
I suppose. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that we discussed before, like this album being 15 tracks, which I guess compared to most albums, that's quite a few songs.
Yeah.
Was there any kind of like apprehension of how many songs you put on there? I mean, I think when you have like so many tracks, I guess the worry is it varied enough? Is this going to keep attention? Are people going to listen from it to start to finish? But yeah,
I don't think we really care if people listen to it from start to finish, because in this age of music streaming and stuff, most people will just put their shit on playlists or whatever, and that's fine too. Like we don't care what. Like I said, it doesn't really matter what order you listen to this album in. Like, sure, if you like listening to albums in order, that's great. the concept will still work for you. You can listen to this album backwards and it'll still work. But yeah, there's definitely always the apprehension of, is it too long? Is it interesting enough all the way through? What songs do you release as singles? What songs do you not release as singles, so that you keep a bit of, that you don't just show your full hand of what's most exciting about the album 6 months before the album even comes out. And I think the most important one for me is just, is it possible to keep an album interesting all the way through for an entire hour and keep it sounding different enough all the way through that it keeps, someone that wants to listen to the album in full interested? That's like the hardest thing to do. That's why, a lot of bands, the norm is kind of releasing like 8 to 12 track albums, because it's easy to not, have any songs that are considered filler, or any songs that don't run the risk of sounding like samey, or getting kind of, your ears get tired at a point of listening to something that's so, especially with metal and say like math rock or post-hardcore, there's just so many auditory things going on. It can be overwhelming because there's like guitar, vocals, like synth layers or strings. There's just like, it's not like listening to a pop or a rap record where it's just a beat and then the singer and some sound design. It's like maybe 20 to 50 layers of shit that is going on. And not to play down any of the fucking fantastic work that goes into modern pop music, but it's just so much more sensory overload with metal music and music that has so many layers like that. It can be a sensory overload. Yeah. And when you're listening to so many songs that are a sensory overload back to back for an entire hour, even unintentionally, you can end up just tuning out. So I think this album is, even though we structured it in a way that is interesting thematically to us and that we enjoy and that we can listen through because we're used to it by this point. We can listen through the whole thing and have no issue with it because we're so familiar with it. I don't think it necessarily matters, at least for, how people consume music these days, in what order or how many songs you listen to off this album, because like I said earlier, I think it was before we even started the podcast proper, is that we kind of made sure that we were happy with every single song on this record, and we listened to it over and over again. We'd stop listening to it, listen to it over and over again, and made sure that every one of those 15 songs that went onto this record, that we were confident that it could be a single if we were to put it out by itself. And it would be, even if it was weird or a sensory overload or whatever, that the songwriting was still strong. It's still an interesting song, in isolation to itself. Yeah. That say if it came up on Release Radar on Spotify, or it came up on a playlist that someone was listening to or whatever, that it would hopefully be interesting enough to catch someone to listen to it rather than skipping it. So, I mean, I think it's you kind of have to think of those things in this day and age. Yeah. Where you can't just be like, oh no, I hate the current state of music listening, and I only want people to listen to my album as an album and from track 1 to track 15 in that order. Yeah, I don't think that's kind of realistic anymore. You kind of just have to trust that people will find your music and enjoy it in whatever way they want to enjoy it in, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I don't think you have to worry about, like, people that want to listen to it as an album will, and people that don't won't do that. Yeah. So it just is how it is. And I think as long as you're sure and you're confident about every song that goes onto an album, yeah, I think that's all that you can really, you can't really do more than that. It's not up to you. Like, the rest is up to the fans and up to the listeners on whether they like it or not and whether you did a good job. So yeah, it is tough and it is scary. And like I said, it's terrifying that, we have so many songs that people haven't heard yet, dropping in like 2 days, because we don't know how those people are we don't know how people are going to react to it and whether they're going to like those those additional 10 songs from the album. But we know that we're happy with them, and that's what matters to us. So yeah, we did as much as we could to make sure of that, and we just have to hope for the best.
That's all you can do. That's all you can do. Yeah. Well, you mentioned the song Crybaby before, which is the closing track on one of the singles, and you've got Andrew Wells on there from Idola, Let's Go and Dance. I believe you've wanted to have him on a Galleons song for a while now. I think, was he not originally kind of meant to be on Let's Pretend, but that just didn't...
Yeah, he was. He was meant to be on... He was, yeah. And then I think Let's Pretend came out... the demo. We finished the demo for that, and we were talking to him about it around the same time as COVID, when COVID started. in March of 2020. And I think at that point, things just fell apart for everyone pretty much. So yeah, we just kind of fell out of contact for a little while, and the song didn't really move anywhere in terms of the feature. I think there was also some stuff label-wise going on with Idola that they were trying to get the architect out as well. And there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes for them that, Andrew couldn't talk about at that time. And it was just kind of eating up a lot of his time as well. So he wasn't really, availability, I think, just became a big issue. So we had to obviously work with Garrett, and that was, I fucking love how that song turned out. So, things happen for a reason. And that's like one of my favorite songs that we've done. And Garrett just added, everything that I could have hoped that Andrew would have added to the song in his own way. So it ended up being what it was, and it ended up being, it ended up just being the song that it was meant to be, regardless of whether Andrew was meant to be on it or not. But yeah, I've been in contact with Andrew for probably like since 2018, maybe.
Long time.
Like, yeah, I've been. It was like not like, it wasn't really like talking to him directly, or like it was only like occasionally like sending him an email back and forth a few times from like 2018 to say like 2020. And then in 2021, we got more in touch, and we were, he was liking the demos that we were working on. And then things kind of fell off because the world fucking fell apart. And then we just had to get that album out. They had to get the architect out. And then with this album, I came back to him, and when I was over in the USA, I was hanging out with him, and we were talking about it, and it was just right place, right time, which was good. It just all finally clicked, and he really liked the song. I actually sent him like the full album, and he chose that song in particular to sing on. So that's what I mean by like Sergey always comes in at like the 11th hour with like an incredible song that Andrew was like, I have to be on that song. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was kind of, I didn't actually think he picked that song, because I with Idola, they're usually writing a lot more like technical music, and there's a lot going on with their songs as well. So I thought he was going to pick one of the songs that was a lot more like noodly, or a lot more technical in that sense. But no, he like Crybaby isn't so flashy in terms of its like technical guitar playing. Like it's more of a, in terms of, I'm not saying that it's like poorly written or anything. Don't take it that way. But compared to like some of the other songs on the album is what I'm saying, that are like batshit crazy, like math rock, like weird time signature songs. It's a lot more straightforward as a song, and it's more like focused on being catchy and melodic, and just it's more and I didn't think Andrew would pick like that song. I thought he would pick something that was more complex, I guess. So that was surprising, but it couldn't have turned out better. I'm so happy with what he did with it. And then it was just a struggle finally getting him to get on the song.
Finally got there, man, after a few years.
Made it happen finally, yeah.
Then you got Craig Owens as well, haven't you, in Rio?
Yes.
They're both on there as well.
Yeah, Craig was super, super easy to talk to. And I think I met him as well when he came. We were like talking around the same time as he was doing a tour of Australia for Drugs. So I met him as well and talked in person about the song and about what we wanted him to do. And that worked out. With that song, it was basically, from the moment I demoed it, I was like, this is like basically a Chiodos track. So it makes sense to have Craig on the song. And that was kind of like the only thought process to it. It was just like, this sounds like Chiodos, let's get Craig, if we can get Craig. And that worked out too. And that was, I couldn't be happier with it. Couldn't be happier with all the features on this. Rio, his feature was like, I didn't expect that one either, because I met Rio through Yosh of Survive Said the Prophet, because I was friends with him, and he featured on the last Valiant Hearts record. And then he's like best friends with Rio. He's been best friends with Rio for years, and I had no idea. So I was just like talking to Yosh, and then he was like, do you want to help with some design stuff for Rio's new band? And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. I'll do some of that. And then, I don't know, it just, he introduced me through Rio. I became good friends with Rio. I went on tour with his band when I was in Japan last year. And it just, everything happened pretty naturally with the features, which is the way I like it. I don't like shoehorning in features to songs that, might not need them, or that people don't want to be on. Like when we come to a feature artist, we might already have a song in mind for them, but that doesn't necessarily mean that has to be the song that they're on. Like we might come to them with one song and then be like, all right, but if you don't like this, here's like 3 or 5 other options, right? With Andrew, we came to him with 15 different options. And then with Rio, I sent him like pretty much every track that Andrew hadn't chosen that had screaming on it. So yeah, everyone pretty much, yeah, I think other than Craig, because we were like, that's the Chiodo song. So Rio and Andrew, they both chose what songs they wanted to be on. So yeah, it happened really naturally and very smoothly all the way around. Because trust me, I know from experience that definitely sometimes it can be a nightmare trying to work with artists that aren't, you don't usually work together. It might just be for one feature or whatever. And everyone has their own way of working. Everyone has their own time frame and their own life going on and their own, like when they can do things, when they can't do things. And it can be a logistical nightmare setting a lot of things up. But this time around, it was, one of the, like 3 of the smoothest. Yeah, maybe some other, some logistical things, like I said, here and there, where we had some like issues with Dungeon Dweller with getting the mix done, and we had to shuffle some things around in the single order. But other than that, it was pretty smooth, which is what I like. I don't because I'm the one organizing it all. I don't like when I have to when stuff like that happens and I have to shuffle things around, or I have to delay things, or I have to, it's always just, it's a domino effect where one thing happens and then it's going to push something else. It always sucks.
Yeah. I noticed that in some like previous interviews and stuff you've done, that you kind of briefly mentioned potentially wanting to re-record and reimagine the debut EP, Kodiak Soul. Is that something you'd still want to do, or is that kind of not in your mind now?
We come back to that idea like every year, and we're like, oh, is it worth doing? Should we do it? Is it too I don't think anyone even really knows what that EP is, because it's not on streaming. It's literally just a Bandcamp EP we put it out for free. It was mostly it had like a lot of DIY stuff. It's not like, in terms of my vocals, it's not particularly like written well, or it's not like vocally. I had no idea what I was doing at that point, because it was the first thing that I literally ever recorded.
Okay.
Right? So that was like the first things I ever wrote, ever recorded. And I was using like a shitty USB microphone where like the entire thing was clipping. It was like a nightmare. It was horrible. I had no idea what I was doing. So while it would be good to remake that, I think we're just more focused on doing new things and moving forward rather than going backwards. Even with Valiant Hearts, I still want to like remake our first album, and to an extent our first EP as well. But money is money, and would I rather spend money on making something new, or just rehashing something that I've already done for the sake of a very small niche audience of ours that likes those older things? Which is to say, like, if I had the money to do that, I would do it in a heartbeat. Like, if I had the money to both do a remake of those albums or those releases, and also still be making new music at the same time, then yeah, of course, in a perfect world, I would do both things. But it would cost probably to remake those projects, or to remake those albums or those EPs to the quality that we're currently used to, and the standard that we now hold ourselves to in terms of quality. Each song would roughly cost like $450 to mix, like USD. So I don't know, like 700 Australian, which is just, it is what it is. It's just the quality that we want for our songs, and it's worth the money. But it's not, even for an EP at that size, it would still cost us around, like, for 3 songs. And then to do marketing, visuals, all that stuff, probably still be like a $5,000 project. So it's just, where would we rather put that money? That's the question that it always comes down to. And whenever the conversation comes up, we're always, at least in my head, as the one that handles most of the finances, I'm like, where do I want the money to go towards? Do I want it to go? Yeah. And I posed that question to the guys as well. And I'm like, what would you rather do? Would you rather spend the next 6 months putting out, music that we've already put out just in higher quality? Or would you rather be writing and recording and mixing in like music that we're genuinely excited about? And I think the choice is always pretty easy for us every time.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So hopefully the fans also agree, and the listeners agree, even though I would love to give that to them, for the audience that does want that. I think until the point where we get until I'm not scared about going broke from doing both those things at once, I think new music is just going to be what everyone's going to be getting for the time being.
Yeah. Well, obviously with the way that the band is set up geographically, and especially with kind of what's going on in the part of the world where the other members are, I guess obviously playing live has just become more difficult, even though obviously the popularity of the band has increased over the years. But I mean, before all that stuff over there started happening, was it getting a bit more realistic that you guys would be able to do some kind of touring at some point?
It honestly was. And I think before that all went down, we were literally talking about like, oh, like, will it be possible if you guys, because Max now is basically a full-time, like doing, just because of how different Russia's economy right now is to say like everywhere else in the world, where like it's like not even comparable to say like most Western countries where their currency is just so far below most other countries' currencies. So Max is now doing music full-time as well. Like he does tutoring as well as writing, and then he gets royalties, obviously. And he's in the same, 2 different countries, but the same sort of boat that I'm in, where I do music full-time. My expenses might be a lot higher because I live in Australia, not Russia, but it's the same sort of situation where we're both working on music full-time, whether it's tutoring or, doing guitar lessons or whatever. He does those. But before that all went down in Russia and that war started, we were definitely looking at options for like, because we were both self-employed at that point, or technically self-employed as musicians. We were like, okay, well, can we get a work visa? Can we get a work visa for Max? Can we get a work visa for Eugene? I think Eugene is actually doing music full-time now as well, which is good. I think he plays in like some other bands in Russia as like a touring member, and right. He also works at a music school. So everyone's doing pretty well considering the circumstances. And Sergey luckily was able to leave Russia, and he's now living in Poland, which is much better. And at least in terms of like thinking about touring, he is actually the one that is most viable to still do that, because he's not in a country that has sanctions on it, where you can't even, get a flight out of the country now really to most, like, say like the USA or Australia or whatever. You can't really do that at the moment. But like he's also waiting on getting, he has to stay in Poland for a while now until he gets a new passport. So he can't really tour or do anything until that happens. So logistically, it's still incredibly difficult for us to do anything. There's so many moving parts that have to be put into place, or so many pieces that have to fall into place for us to tour still.
Yeah.
Money is obviously a huge one, because paying for flights for everyone, even, once, the war hopefully ends and everything is resolved there, hopefully in a peaceful way and in a good way, it's still a lot of money to get those guys flown out from Russia to anywhere else in the world, even to the US or to the UK or to Australia. It's still thousands and thousands of dollars for a ticket. And then on top of that, there's, buying all the stuff for touring, like casing, a touring setup, unless we hire instruments and stuff when we're over in those countries. That's all like the easy stuff. Yeah. Then we also have like getting them like work visas in Russia, which is very difficult because unfortunately most countries hate the Russian passport. So it's very difficult to get a work visa for when you're in Russia. So luckily with Sergey in Poland, once he gets a Polish passport, hopefully he'll have an easier time being able to get a work visa or a green card to go and work and tour in Australia and wherever else in the world. So yeah, very difficult, but we have had like other ideas where, if we want to just start trying to have a touring setup that we can have like touring members that are hired particularly just for touring in certain countries, like in Japan, like talking with Rio and Yosh, they can help me set up like Japanese touring members if we want to go and tour Japan. We could probably make that work. And then once like all of this hopefully resolves itself and we can actually get the guys out of Russia to actually play live, we don't have to use touring members anymore, and we can actually get everyone together playing. But, I think touring live, especially for me, is because I've now like gotten a taste for it a little bit by like I played with Idola when I was in the US just for one song. And then I've done like a few shows with some friends here in Australia. I think once you get a taste for doing it, it's hard to kind of get it out of your mind. Like be like, no, we're not going to tour. Because it's just even though it is super expensive and it's very, because the thing is that if we didn't tour at all, I think we'd be fine still, because we, as a band, and me as a self-employed musician or whatever, I do graphic design, video editing, whatever else as well. Financially, we would be pretty fine, pretty solid. Like we have a pretty, as long as people keep listening to us and we keep putting out music, we would be relatively safe. We would still be able to keep making albums. We would still be able to make music on the regular. we would still be able to do pretty much everything a normal band does except tour. So relatively, we would be okay. But the thing is, you know, I want to tour as well. Like, I want to be able to go to these countries and play these songs and enjoy them with everyone else. But yeah, it's so hard to do when you're like, not just when you're in different countries, but to organize that even for touring members in multiple different countries, like to get people set up ready to learn your songs in the US, to get people ready to like learn your songs in the UK, in Japan. You have to communicate with so many different people and get so many different people on the same page. And logistically, I can just see that being like an absolute fucking like a nightmare. And I can see like so many things going wrong. You could just hire a person and they could just fucking leave you in the lurch on like the last minute, and you're like, you don't have a fucking guitarist.
Yeah, and then you have to play it to a track, so it's kind of like a karaoke kind of thing, then, isn't it? So yeah. So yeah, like it's a nightmare to think about, no matter how much I want to do it. But it is still something that I think we want to work towards. It just depends how long and how ongoing this stuff in Russia goes for, and if the guys can even get work visas. Yeah, it's so many just unanswerable questions at the moment, unfortunately. And it's been like that for the last few years as well. Like, these aren't new questions. They're the same questions that we've always had. But, you know, hopefully as we get more popular, it'll be easier to answer those questions. Money is obviously the main thing, because, you know, if we had the money to, say, I don't know how much a work visa costs on a Russian passport, but I can't imagine it being cheap. Like, if we had the money to do that first and foremost, that would be a good first step. But like I said, we really do think about, you know, what is most important, or what's the most beneficial thing to put that money towards first and foremost. And for us, that's usually just always new music. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's always what it comes back to with us, whether it's touring or like working on remaking old music. Yeah. We always just come back to new music is what's going to keep the band alive at this point. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, you've got to keep the band going, and then, like I say, hopefully in a few years when things kind of stabilize a bit more, and that could be a possibility. But for now, I guess just stay the course.
Yeah, and it's also like, you'll see like a lot of bands, like even if they're bands that are more popular than us, they're, you know, operating at a loss on tour, whereas we're, at least on the last 2 albums for Galleons and the last 2 albums for Valiant Hearts, we're completely operating at a profit. So that's really good. Like, we're able to consistently have like profit and be in the green for a majority of our albums, and also have, you know, be able to reinvest that money again into making new music, and you know, hopefully one day putting that towards touring as well. So my goal, like on the business side, was always to get, you know, a few albums under us that were financially stable and financially profitable, to be able to propel whatever we want to do in the future. And then obviously, as the more albums that we have under us and the more, you know, royalties that we're making back from that music, you know, obviously the music still has to be good, but I have a business oriented mind, because I'm the one that's also doing all that as well for the band, and making sure that we can still afford to make music. You know, I have to keep us profitable to a sense, because if we're working at a loss for like 10 years as a band, and everyone has to go back to working part-time jobs or full-time jobs, you know, which many bands, like I said, that are more popular than us still do, because touring is such a drain on budgets and revenue, that, you know, some people, I have friends that still operate this way, where they're in bands that have more listeners than us and more followers, whatever. Most of them still work full-time jobs, and then they take time off those full-time jobs to go tour and to play their songs, and those tours cost tens of thousands of dollars. And like, yes, it is a fucking fantastic feeling to be able to go and play those songs for fans. But at the same time, like, you're risking your livelihood every time you set foot on another continent, if that makes sense. And, you know, I would personally take that risk if I had the money to do so. But I think at this point, it would be either we make new music or we find a way to tour, and touring is all we do for, say, like 2 years or like a year and a half. And you get no new music, because we don't have the money to do both. One or the other. And like, obviously that's why bands will put out an album, and then they'll go on tour, and they'll tour that album, and they'll do a tour cycle for an album, and then they'll go back into the studio and they'll write more. With us, I feel like one day, I definitely think we will tour, but I think it'll be interesting that we'll be doing the opposite, where we're going to have a bunch of albums under our belt, And then I kind of want to, when we start touring, I just want to play like, I don't know, I want to play like just a set that is just so full of everything that is from the start of when we were a band to that current point of when we were a band. And I think that's a very interesting idea as well. But yeah, it's fucking rough, dude. Like, music is not one of the hardest businesses out there, and I feel very privileged and very lucky to be in a situation like the one that I'm in, where I get to be at home every day working on music and doing design and whatever else, and not having, like, I think I also told you this before we maybe started the podcast, but like, I was working the same as a lot of these other musicians do, 40-50 hour weeks every day of the week except for weekends, sometimes even working overtime on weekends, just to get enough money to pay to make albums and pay to make music. And once I was able to, I don't know whether you want to call it, like with Odyssey, with Valiant Hearts, once that kind of like broke out a little bit and it got like I said, I think it's at like 15 million streams now, which I think over the course of the last 4 years, I think it's earned roughly like $100,000 for us. But that has all been reinvested in music, roughly. It's gone to pay like both me, Igor, and I's like rent and our living expenses, but also then it gets just reinvested in music. So even though that album is in profit and we're technically a profitable band in a sense, we still also walk a very tight rope where, like, any album, if it doesn't go well or if people don't like it or whatever, if it flops, like, we're looking at a very slow recoupment of what it costs to make that album. And then that really hurts your livelihood as a musician, because you're operating on, like, you've spent, like, say $20,000 on an album and you were expecting to maybe make that all back within maybe, say, 1 year or so from when that album releases. But if that album flops, like, you're looking at like 2 to 3 years, maybe 5 years, if people just aren't interested in it, is what I mean. Of getting that money back. And then you're like, fuck, well, now I'm like $20,000 out, and this is not going to be earned back anytime soon, and I have no idea what to do. So yeah, it's fucking rough. Not just like, we have it easy. Touring bands, I can't even imagine what it's like to be a touring band. Like, that scares me more than releasing new music.
You talked a bit about Valiant Hearts there, which is your other project. What's kind of going on with that at the moment? Like, is new stuff coming around the corner, or what's going on there?
Yeah, around the corner or around a few corners. We've been working on stuff for the last 2 years, or since the last album came out. The last album, we tried a few like different things. Of course, like I said, I'm always interested in trying new and fresh ideas. That from album to album, I never really want to stagnate doing the exact same carbon copy of a thing. I like to try different things vocally, try different things instrumentally, try different things sonically, whether it's like using like orchestral synthesizers or just like electronic synthesizers, or just trying different sounds. And I think Yonder, while there are a lot of songs, and I love most of the songs on that album, we got like a lot of constructive criticism from people that listened to that album and had things that they didn't like about it, things that they weren't sold on, things that, even looking back on it, things that I thought could have been executed better. The album still like has done great for us. I think it's close to, it didn't pop off like Odyssey. Odyssey was like a fucking lightning in a bottle for us, which was great. That like I said, we wouldn't be where we are now without Odyssey, which I'm extremely grateful for. Yonder was like a little bit underwhelming compared to that, which is fine. Not every album is going to go off like Odyssey did for us. But, we're trying to really look and assess what people want out of our band and what people are mainly interested in our band for, and how we can do that to the highest quality and still, take on board all that criticism people had from the last album and address it, whether it's like vocal things that I did, or like the mix quality, or not that was an issue. I'm just like spitballing like random things. Or even like the tone of the songs in general, like anything, any criticism, like we take on board and take to heart, and we spend a lot of time scrutinizing every single one of those things, and maybe scrutinizing to the point of overthinking, where we're just like stuck on it for a long time, going, well, fuck, we can't put out new music until we've addressed all these things that we have gotten criticism for and that we want to fix. But, you can't fix all the criticism, because with every single release that you do, there's going to be different criticisms. And it's like when you change one thing, you might create two new things that people are going to criticize that sound for.
Yeah.
So you can't really win. There's no winning either way. You just have to put out new music and hope that people like it. So we've really been, regardless of that, we've really been trying to nail down a sound that we're happy with, trying to find something that sounds familiar yet also new, something that is still like that. I don't know. I kind of went back to Odyssey. I went back to like our original inspirations that were like from Hands Like Houses with Ground Dweller. And I've even been talking to Trenton lately from Hands Like Houses, and that's been really cool. He's one of the nicest guys I've ever talked to. Just, yeah, incredibly welcoming, incredibly, you know, of all the stuff that Valiant Hearts has like gone through, of like saying that we've been inspired by Hands Like Houses, and people, you know, I mean, saying that, you know, maybe sometimes that we sound too much like them, or that, you know, there's, like I said, criticisms that come from a lot of different places. You know, it was really nice to finally get to talk to Trenton and kind of not have that as a worry, where it's like we weren't trying to steal thunder from their band in any way. It was just you know, I wouldn't, and I don't say this lightly, but I wouldn't be a musician without him. I wouldn't be a musician working today or doing what I love without what he did in Hands Like Houses. I literally would not be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for him. So yeah, I'm glad that there wasn't like any contention in you know, when finally getting to talk to him, where, you know, a lesser person might have been like, oh, I don't really want to talk to you because you were, you know, writing in a band that was trying to, you know, copy a band that I was in, or not even copy, but, you know, I've talked to people in the past that have had, you know, a much more fragile look at inspiration in music and stuff like that. So like even if people were to go and say they were inspired by my music and write an album that's like, say, similar to Odyssey or Yonder or Galleons or whatever, I think that's humbling and inspiring in its own way, as the person that originally wrote what inspired someone else. So, but I know a lot of people that are out there that are musicians that don't like when, or necessarily like when an album comes along that sounds similar to them, and they're like, oh, you're just trying to rip us off. Like you're just trying to ride coattails, or you're trying to be a facsimile or a lesser version of whatever we make, right? Like there are definitely musicians out there that have that mindset, that whether you want to call it like a fragile ego, or they're not, you know, they can't see inspiration or homage or love for their own music as something positive. Like I've not only known people like that, but I know that there are people like that. So I was very grateful and very happy to, when I finally got to talk to Trenton, that it wasn't like that, and there was no, you know, there was nothing like that in the mix, which I'm really, really grateful for. But yeah, I mean, Valiant Hearts stuff, I think I've been scrutinizing and laboring over that music more than I have this Galleons album. And I told you that like this Galleons album is one that we spent a lot of time thinking about. The new Valiant Hearts stuff is something that's been, you know, we've been looking at rewriting, scrapping, doing a whole bunch of shit for like the last 2.5 years now. We've only just finished some songs recently. I think there's like 3 songs that we finished recently that I'm pretty happy with. I think our fear is just sounding too old school, I would say. Like we don't want to sound like, say, like 2015 or 2010s post-hardcore anymore. We want to try and modernize it a bit, but also not lose any of the technicality or the songwriting that we have. And I think that's very hard to do, because a lot of modern metal, or a lot of, you know, most of the rock or the metal that's popping off these days is a lot of metalcore.
Yeah.
So it's more oriented, like post-hardcore has sort of been relegated to being more of an underground genre again now, and it's not as popular as metalcore, I would say. I mean, just look at Spirit Box getting nominated for a Grammy. Like it's obviously that genre, like name me the last time a post-hardcore band was nominated for a Grammy, right? I don't think it's ever happened. I mean, I might be dead wrong. Someone might, maybe like Glassjaw or something, but I doubt it.
I don't think they did, but who knows?
No, I doubt it. But I mean, great fucking band. But yeah, but realistically, if you have to look at the modern metal scene, most of what is like popping off commercially, not that that's our biggest worry, but I'm just saying from a general user, like a general listener, like in terms of popularity, metalcore is where most people are gravitating towards currently in terms of popular metal music. And I think post-hardcore has been struggling, I think, a little bit to catch up to that in terms of like modernity. I think it still feels a little outdated, and that I think post-hardcore is maybe still stuck a little bit in, and it's not a bad thing. Like, I love 2015, 2012, older post-hardcore. Like, I fucking love it. It's still something that I listen to daily or weekly, right? But I think that it doesn't stand out anymore in the sea of what is considered like quote unquote modern. And I think even with this new Galleons record, we tried to do more of that. We tried to push more into a modern direction, whether that was through production gimmicks or production sounds or whatever, and a little bit of writing. But with Valiant Hearts, I've been kind of like agonizing over that and like stressing myself out a lot over like, does this sound too old? Does this sound like it will be interesting? And I know it's something that maybe I don't have to worry about because the music will speak for itself. And it will, if it's good, it's good. And it doesn't really matter if it sounds modern or not. But I think, you know, and I'm not trying to be like a trendsetter either. I'm just trying to make sure that we're pushing forward instead of just constantly going backwards, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because I find it more interesting when I'm trying new things and trying to push into new areas or more modern areas, I guess, that I find even more inspiration in, like, than just the 10 years behind me that I've already drawn inspiration from. Because you can only draw inspiration from an older thing so many times before you're just repeating yourself. So I think pulling inspiration from modern things and more contemporary sounds is what's been my focus for Valiant Hearts, and trying to, and just so people don't get worried, no, that doesn't mean like I'm pushing it or we're trying to push it into a metalcore direction. It is still like through and through post-hardcore. Not that that's bad, but I'm saying that people obviously like Valiant Hearts for the fact that it's post-hardcore, that it's melodic, that it's maybe technical, but not like progressive rock or like progressive metal technical. It like lies in a space in between, which is where I think its interest and its intrigue from people comes from. And that's what I like about it as well. But at the same time, I want to keep it from feeling like it's just 2015 post-hardcore with a new coat of paint in terms of like mixing and production. I want to actually make sure that I'm trying to not just go backwards. I guess that's probably the best way I can put it. So it's coming, it's coming, but it's coming slowly. And I've had to get this Galleons album out before I could even think about the financial prospect of a new Valiant Hearts album. So that's been another big hurdle to get over. So now that this Galleons album is going to be out, I'm going to have a lot more room to breathe in terms of Valiant Hearts, both Valiant Hearts and a new project that I've started with Sergey, which is called Endless, which is really a name that came from existential dread of just, I don't really know how to explain it yet, but it was just, I don't know, it's a very simple name. It's probably a name that maybe another band even has, but I don't think so. Not in like the scene, like the alternative scene at least. I don't think there's a band called Endless. There might be another band that has like Endless in their name, but either way, anyway, beside the point, we started that band and we've got about 9 or 8 demos for that one in the can as well. So we're just working on polishing all those demos up, and then we want to, I don't know, maybe shop those demos around to some labels and see if they're interested. That definitely has like a more modern sound to it than both of these other projects. I think we're more focused on making it like, honestly, it's more of like a pop and metal project, but it's like still very emo as well. So I think everyone will get the picture once we start releasing tracks from it. But a lot of things going on right now that I don't have the money for.
Thanks very much for your time, Tom. I know I've noticed
no worries.
Quite a bit of it, and
no, it's okay. I've rambled, so
it's all good, man. Like, thank you for sharing your experiences and your stories, and more about Galleons and the album, and obviously like just the way that the dynamics of the band and how it kind of operates and stuff. It's really interesting. I really appreciate you giving me the time and bringing me on. Yeah, of course, man. Before I let you go, any final words? Anything you want to say or plug? Floor's yours.
Just the album's out. Well, this will come out after the album, so the album is out, and I hope you're all enjoying it. I hope you're ready for more new music, whether it's, I mean, we have some things that we want to do after the album as well, whether they're like B-sides or just we want to keep like music coming out consistently now after this album, because we kind of went silent for 2 years, and we don't really want to do that again. We kind of want to like keep dropping songs regularly just to keep people reassured that we're alive and we have a pulse. But the album is out. Put a lot of work into it, a lot of money, a lot of time. We hope it was worth it. And thank you for having me.
Cheers, man. Take care of yourself.
See ya.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
And that is it. Thank you so much for listening. Again, if you enjoyed this or any other episode of the podcast, then please leave a rating and review wherever you're listening to this. If you want to support the podcast further, you can go and give it a follow on social media, pick up something from the merch store, or subscribe to the Patreon to get early access to episodes. All of the links can be found at itsnotaphase.co.uk. That's itsnotaphase.co.uk. Thanks again, hopefully catch you on the next one, and remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle.